Brock Huard, good friend of the station, particularly Isaac and Suk. I've talked to Brock a little bit, but Brock Huard is on with Colin Cowherd yesterday, and he made a point. He talked about what the Seahawks are doing. They're on the clock at 16. I've been saying out loud for a couple weeks, I think the Seahawks are going line play here, whether that's offense or defensive. It's a deep draft. Mm-hmm. There's some good defensive prospects, some really good offensive line prospects, really deep at that spot. But it's starting to build up a little buzz that it might not go that way. Here was Brock Huard's thoughts on the Seahawks, who are sitting at 16, how he views them in the first round.
Well, the Seahawks have the greatest advantage, more advantage than anybody else in the league in this draft. Because 2 of these 6 guys, if they want a quarterback, if they're going to go that route as they've cleaned house on the coaching staff. Yesterday, they cut 3 guys. They're starting to clean house on the roster. They've got an advantage that nobody else has. Ryan Grubb and Scott Huff, the OC and O-line coach, were with this guy, building this thing for the last 2 years. On the other side, Mike McDonald was with J.J. McCarthy for a season at Michigan. That year, they finally beat Ohio State. So they have guys that don't have to, trust scouts or head coaches or GM's opinions. They were embedded with those guys. So they will know them better than anybody else. And I think those are the 2 that they would target, in my opinion, because of some of that background.
Now, it doesn't mean that they're going to draft a quarterback. It just means they have the information they need for both quarterback prospects of JJ and Penix.
Right.
I think I'm ready to flip. I'll flip-flop. I think they're going to take quarterback. He's making me feel like they're taking a quarterback. They have the information. Again, they could draft line. It would make sense to me. You don't have to throw yourself at a quarterback just to say you did it. But they have the information. He's not wrong there, and it makes me think that the Seahawks are going to dabble in the quarterback stuff at 16.
Yeah.
If not, move up and get one.
See, and that's where it gets interesting. I don't think they'll move up because John Schneider's not a move-up GM. In fact, he's a move-back GM.
But what did we learn about John Schneider?
It was a lot of Pete Carroll, too.
It was a lot of Pete Carroll. He liked, there was a story that he liked Mahomes. He liked Allen. Yeah. And they didn't do it.
Yeah, but you also got to be careful with that because when did that get released? It got released recently, right? When Pete Carroll gets left.
No, he was still at the Hawks. I want to say it was like before his last year or second to last year, and it was a super random story, and you're like, whoa, he really liked Josh Allen, and he didn't draft him.
After Allen and Mahomes have already been proven as good products, and they've worked. How many of those guys was he like, hey, I'm pretty interested in this guy that didn't work?
But Will, if I showed you his notebook, John Schneider, who's running the show now.
Right.
If I showed you the notebook and had all of these notes on Josh Allen, regardless of what Allen has been, wouldn't you say, dude, nailed it? And I kind of want that guy to make the decision he thinks is best for the team at that spot?
Yes, and I don't disagree that maybe there's an opportunity for a quarterback to be what is best for them at 16. I don't know that J.J. McCarthy is there. From what everyone is saying, and it seems like there's everyone in NFL circles, from scouts, GMs, I mean, shoot, even some of the insiders, it seems like everyone is much higher on McCarthy than clearly we are. We've had the conversation before where it almost feels like they want to go with him because of what they think he can still do.
I just don't
almost
see it with him, yeah.
And I'm with there, too, where it's like, it almost feels like because Michigan asked him to only do 3 things, everyone thinks, well, he could also do 4, 5, 6, that he hasn't shown the ability to do, but he also wasn't asked to do. What I would prefer, and this is coming from, a guy who's in the trenches, you have these issues on your O and your D line, specifically on your D line, where you were horrible against the run. You were bottom, you were in the 30, 31, 32 against the run last year. You're bringing in a defensive-minded head coach. Exactly. So why wouldn't you go into a draft where you can get solid defensive linemen at multiple different positions? You can grab a D tackle if that's what you want. You want a run stopper, you can go and get that. There are multiple D linemen at that D end outside linebacker spot that should be still available at 16. You could get the UCLA kid, Latu. You can go and maybe get a big riser right now.
Is Chop Robinson a reach? Because some mocks have him at the back end of the first, but his measurements, his combine stuff was amazing.
If Versay's still there, that's someone that you could go get. So there are these other guys that are available in a position that I think is more of a need, that I think that they would go and take in that spot. If they are going to go quarterback, though, and I do think this is the draft to go and get a quarterback, I don't hate grabbing Penix. I worry about the injury issues. Other than the injury issues, Penix would be a higher draft pick in this draft if he didn't have those. I think you can still get him at the back end of the first or maybe in the second. So if you want to move up, then might be the better time to move up and go and get him.
Dane Brugler of The Athletic covers the NFL draft. He put out his mock yesterday. He's got the Vikings trading up with Tennessee and taking McCarthy.
Right. Like
He has McCarthy as the next guy after the other guys.
I think McShay was saying that he could see him now be like a top 10 guy. There's talk like he might
there's a lot of top 10 buzz with McCarthy right now. Yes.
So I don't know that McCarthy will even be there.
In Brugler's mock, he has Atlanta actually trading up and taking Jaden Daniels. He has the Commanders going May, which, I feel like there's more buzz that Daniels is going second right now than May, but maybe Washington will pivot out of that. And then he has Atlanta going 3 because, dude, New England, they need a lot. And a quarterback could very well be what they do. But if you need a lot, your quarterback's not going to succeed very much. And then you don't want, after 1 year, let's go to Carolina.
Right.
I already thought Bryce Young was a bad idea. It's too small. It doesn't make sense to me. But even saying all that, he certainly didn't get a fair shake.
No.
But everybody's takeaway is,
yeah, he's not good enough.
Right, and that's not all his fault. This coach got fired. They hired a coach that was kind of a retread. Skill position. Yeah, just a lot of things were not built for him to succeed. That might be what it is in New England right now.
Yeah, and this is why the draft is so interesting, and the NFL has done a great job of making it now this big primetime event. Like, you have the combine.
It goes
later
to different
on
cities.
In the day.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, their schedule in the NFL is perfect because you're always talking about them in the news. We're not even really going to get a true picture of where people are going to get drafted until 2-3 months from now, because as we get closer to the draft, once we're a week or two, because free agency hits before that. There could be a team that you're like, Minnesota, for example. I don't think that Minnesota is necessarily going to need to get a quarterback. They're not going to necessarily need to draft one.
Minnesota?
Why? Because I think Kirk is going to come back.
Really?
But you're hearing all these rumors now from Florio that Kirk Cousins could be in Atlanta. Well, if he decides to sign with Atlanta, then Minnesota needs a quarterback and Atlanta doesn't need one. So how does that move around the draft order? There's always one team that you don't think about that might move up and go and get a quarterback that is going to move up and go and get a quarterback. So when it comes to a lot of these draft stuff, I like to wait until, 2 weeks or so before the draft, before I really start trying to make my predictions or, hey, where's this guy going to land or where that guy's going to land? Because right now, there's so many different variables that could change, that could completely determine where a quarterback gets drafted or doesn't get drafted, or what team goes out and gets a quarterback or doesn't. In Seattle, I really do think that they should draft the quarterback of the future. That's my personal opinion.
Penix too, especially, it's not just that he's good. It's, for a lot of people in Seattle, it'd be kind of cool. It'd be like the guy that was thrown at Montlake.
Right.
His OC's now the OC here.
Mm-hmm.
It just translates in. I don't know if he'll be good. I think that's the most impossible evaluation or takeaways, but I like him.
Right.
He knows the offense. Everybody up there watched him play. Whether you rooted for the Huskies or not, you watched him play.
Yeah.
There's a really cool part of that you can sell and get excitement. But they need some positions.
They need a lot of things.
I mentioned the Athletic mock. They've got Jackson Power Johnson going. So Seattle trades down from 16 with Pittsburgh,
which
they fall to Pittsburgh spot, and they take the center,
which would be a huge upgrade for them. Jackson Powers Johnson was the best center in all of college football. You could make the argument he was one of, if not the best lineman in all of football. The thing that's interesting too is, like, in that mock draft they trade with Pittsburgh. Well, if Pittsburgh signs Russell Wilson, then they don't need to make that trade with Seattle. They'll go get a different pick, or if they think that Mason Rudolph or Kenny Pickett is the guy, then they won't trade either because they won't need to move up for that. So this is where it all gets interesting, and this gets into prime rumor season where it's like, oh, I'm hearing this from this team, I'm hearing that from that team.
Yeah.
And it just seems a little premature. Like, yes, do I think Seattle's in a good spot? 100%, but they have a bunch of different holes to fill, and it's a deep draft. That's why I think they're in a good spot, not because they're at 16 and now they can kind of control who the fourth quarterback is that gets taken.